my crafty friends, it's me, Lisa, the DIY Diva, and I have been so busy making lots of new crafts with supplies that I got at the Dollar Tree. So get ready for a whole bunch of fall crafting.
It all just goes away. The things I plan to say, oh baby.
And I thought I'd get started with an easy craft. Now, isn't this a beautiful frame? I got this at my last trip to the Dollar Tree, and I just fell in love with this frame. It is so pretty. But I thought I could maybe add something a little bit extra to it to make it really specifically for my fall decorating. So I disassembled the frame, took out the glass and everything, so I'm just left with the frame itself. I took some Deco Art acrylic paint. This is in, I think it's like a golden sunset. I don't even know what color this is. I thought this would be a great color for a picture frame. So I just put some acrylic paint onto the frame and you guessed it, I painted the entire frame. And I'm using a larger paintbrush. I don't know what kind this is. I will leave links to these paintbrushes in the description box below because these are probably my favorite types of paintbrushes to use for my crafting. And with this being raw wood, it really accepted the paint very nicely. So I only had to do one coat of paint on the picture frame. Talk about easy. And then I went online and I found a really cute fall printable. And at first I was going to make it a square, but I decided I liked it better by just cutting out the print itself. Then I found this plaid paper online again. I believe this is from Mother Time. So I just cut this down so that it will fit into this picture frame. And I just used the original backing that was the picture in the frame. And then I secured the round printable to the plaid printable. And all that was left to do was to reassemble the frame, putting everything back together, and this project is all done. How easy was that? And I really love this. It's so easy, it's so cute, and it really makes a nice addition to my fall decorating this year. And how about another easy craft? This is an owl from the Dollar Tree. I know you've seen these before. These are so much fun to make over and very easy to make over too. So I just took some folk art white chalk paint and I painted the owl with the chalk paint. The entire owl, everything except the bottom. Got a pretty heavy coat of the chalk paint. I tend to be a little bit heavy-handed when it comes to painting things like this because it just looks so pretty. But if you want to do several smaller coats, you could do that as well. And one of the reasons that I like using the chalk paint for projects like this is because it's a thicker paint and it just seems to adhere well to everything. So I only had to do one coat of paint for this project. And when it was dry, look at this. I have an owl and I also have a pine cone. And now all I'm going to do is take some sandpaper and I'm just going to sand off the edges. Basically, wherever there is a raised edge, I'm going to sand it down with the sandpaper. This will give it a really fun distressed look, kind of a farmhouse look, or I guess you could call it a farmhouse fall look as well. But these ceramic pieces are great if you want to do a little bit of distressing or make the pieces look vintage. Look at how pretty that is. And here is the owl all finished. And this is actually the second one I've done because my daughter liked it so much, she took home the first one. And here is another easy project. I'm going to be using some different embellishments like this jute twine. I'm going to go ahead and cut a bow out of that. And I'm also going to grab some other extra things that I have. And I'm going to take this Dollar Tree Grateful and Thankful pumpkin. And I'm just going to add these extra adornments or embellishments. I made a little bow. I put that onto it. And then I started putting on pieces of raffia. I've had people comment in the past that you should never cut raffia. Well, I think you should do whatever you want to do when you're crafting. And I really like crafting like this. I like adding little single pieces of raffia underneath a bow because I like the way that looks. If you don't want to cut your raffia, don't worry, you don't have to. But for me, I like doing things like this, and maybe it's different, but it's not wrong. Because with crafting, there really isn't anything wrong if you get the end result that you want, right? So I just continued taking little pieces of raffia, and I secured that to the first bow using hot glue, and then I made a second bow and I put that on top. So you can't tell that those are single pieces of raffia. Next, I came back with some strands of the pip berries, and I just attached those underneath the bows on the larger pumpkin and added a few more strands of raffia. And this is the project. Look at how cute this is, and that was so easy. The Dollar Tree has some really great fall decorations this year, and it's really easy to personalize them and make them what you want them to be for your themed decor. I have been collecting these wreath forms from the Dollar Tree for a couple of years now, and I'm finally going to put one of them to use. Well, I did one last year too, but I wanted to really up this one a little bit. So I wanted to see if I could detach the center wires of the pumpkin. At first I tried to rip it apart, that didn't work. Then I tried pliers, that didn't work. So I came back with my Husky nippers. This is a nipping tool, and this was the tool that it took to get this wire disconnected from the pumpkin frame. Now, I only did this on one side. I didn't do it on both sides because then that would totally take it off, and I want to be able to reattach this. So I just cut the bottom end of each of those wire pieces in the center. Next, I came back with some wooden beads, and I filled each of the internal wire strands with the beads. And I believe these beads are 1 inch in diameter, and each of these wire strands took 17 beads to fill up all the way down to the bottom. And this is the time of year that you can find these pumpkin wreath forms at Dollar Tree. You can also find them online, you can find them at Hobby Lobby, but for $1.25, you get the same size wreath form from Dollar Tree. And I wanted to say a huge hello to Angie at the Dollar Tree in Parker, Colorado. Oh my goodness. On my last trip there, she was so incredible and helpful, and I just wanted to say, hi, Angie. So I just continued working my way down each of those wire strands. And then what I did was use a little bit of E6000 to secure the cut wire back onto the frame. Now the E6000 doesn't have an instant hold, so I also did use a little bit of hot glue while I was securing the wire strands back in place. Now, if you're anything like me, when you get to the end of the E6000 tube, it is really difficult to roll. But I found these keys, I think that's what they're called, on Amazon. These have made a huge difference in my crafting. And then to make sure that the glue was completely set up, I did leave this alone for 24 hours before I came back to the next part of the project. Now I'm going to take this macrame cord. I got this on Amazon, and this is in a natural color. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap this all the way around the wire frame that's still showing on the pumpkin wreath. And the reason I'm doing this is because I don't want to see that wire. I want this to look like it's all one piece. I saw something really similar to this at Home Goods, and it was so pretty. And I wanted to see if I could make something similar myself. Now I did cut strips of the macrame cord, so it wasn't one solid piece that I continually wrapped around the wreath form. I did just secure it with hot glue as I went along because I want to make sure that that macrame cord stays nice and tight all the way around the outer portion of the pumpkin wreath. And when I came to one of the beaded strands, I just wrapped it around on either side and made sure to glue it in place. And then I just continued wrapping all the way around the rest of the wreath form. I like that look so much better, but I do want to add a stem to my pumpkin. And I thought it would look really nice to make this look like a really rustic stem. So I went out and just picked up some twigs and sticks from my yard, and then using my hot glue gun, I glued them one at a time to the stem or the stem outline. And then to make sure they were all the same size, I just used my Husky nippers or even just like a wire cutter to make sure all of those sticks are pretty close to the same length. And as I got closer and closer to the pumpkin, I just made the sticks shorter. Look at how pretty that is. Oh my gosh, I am loving this so far, but I do want to add some greenery. So I just took some faux greenery, which had different shades of green, and I just glued those to the top of my pumpkin. And then using this really pretty wire edged ribbon, I did make a bow to go into the center. There are so many different ways that you can make bows like this. For this one, my bow is going to have 4 loops, and then I just used a chenille stem, also known as a pipe cleaner, and I just wrapped that around the center. And then I trimmed down those chenille stems. And then I cut a piece of the wire ribbon, just a smaller piece, so that that's going to go around the chenille stem on the center and look like the center of the bow. And for each of the tails, I did them separately, and I secured each one right below the stem of the pumpkin. I just gathered up the ribbon and joined it with some hot glue. And once that was in place, then I put the center of the bow on top. And I wanted the ribbon to look like it was kind of flowing, kind of like a waterfall type effect. So I did hot glue a little bit of it to the beads. And then all that was left to do was to attach a hanger to the back so I can hang up my wreath. Look at, isn't it so pretty? And here is the wreath all complete and hanging up. This project was really easy to do. It did take a little bit of time, but I think the end results speak for themselves. I think it looks beautiful. I am really happy that I did wrap that macrame cord all the way around the outer edge. I think that makes the wreath look a little more high end, and I think it's just beautiful. Now this is a Dollar Tree crate. And this is some gel stain from Hobby Lobby. So what I did was just take that gel stain and put it onto the crate, and then I just rubbed it in with an old towel. I've never used gel stains before, but I really liked this color. I believe this color is in maple, and I thought it would look really nice to be like a crate that was holding pumpkins. So I just stained the entire crate, all 4 sides, and a little bit on the inside as well. Then I found these pumpkins at Hobby Lobby, and they were $6.99, so they were 40% off. And I just separated each of those pumpkins from the stick that they were on. And look at how many pumpkins I was able to get. This was actually more affordable than if I went to Dollar Tree, and these are like velvet pumpkins. They're so pretty. And then I just took some floral foam and put that into the bottom of the crate to basically raise up the bottom a little bit, so you'll be able to see my pumpkins a little bit better, and I won't have to use as many of them. I secured the 3 bottom pumpkins to the floral foam. And then I came back with some Spanish moss and I filled in any of the blank areas where the foam was showing. And then I just filled in the empty spaces with some more pumpkins. Next, I came back with some craft paper and some distressing ink, and I want to put a sign on my crate that says pumpkins. And I used some distressing ink around the sides to make it look a little bit older. And I also did it with a smaller piece too, because I want to have a price tag on my pumpkins. Then I came back with this stamp, and I like this stamp because it's just letters, but they connect together. So I connected the letters together to spell out pumpkins. Then using some stamping ink, I put pumpkins onto my little piece of cardstock. And I don't have any stamps that have numbers on them, so I was testing out different inks on this cardstock paper to see what it would look like, trying to determine which one was going to be the best to write out the numbers 2 and 5 and a cents sign. I don't even know if people use the cent sign anymore, but I'm going to have my pumpkins be 25 cents. Then I just secured the cardstock to my crate. And I did want to embellish it with a tiny jute bow, so I did put a little tiny bow onto the crate as well. And here is my crate of pumpkins sitting on a shelf. And I'm sorry about the glow. That was from one of the lights that's sitting there as well. But this pumpkin crate is so cute. It was so easy to make. And I think it would be a really cute addition for your decor this year. Now, I have seen this block on Etsy when I've been looking for ideas, and it just says happy. And I've always wanted to make a block like this. So I had this tiny little stamping set, and I took a couple of Jenga blocks and I just put happy on it. But for me, stamping is not really, I'm not that good at it. And for me, it's really challenging. So I did try this a couple more times using the Jenga blocks and trying to get all of my letters lined up and with my little period at the end. And I mean, they're not horrible, but I think I could do something a little bit better with my Cricut machine. So I took some stencil material and using different fonts, I cut out the word happy with a period at the end. Then I just put them on some plain wood scraps that I had. And I burnished the stencil material onto the wood, really making sure that it is secure onto the wood. And then I removed the transfer tape so that the stencil is on the wood and not anything else. And this was a happy accident that I learned. I didn't have anything to stencil the happy onto, so I just took some Dollar Tree sponges. These are like the magic eraser sponges, and I just dabbed that into some burnt umber paint and used that for my stamping. And I'm telling you, these little sponges are fantastic for doing stencils. And something else that I learned is acrylic paint works better than chalk paint for stenciling. And if you do light coats of paint and do several coats of that light coat of paint, the stencil actually turns out really nice. And another tip is that you want to remove the stencil while the paint is still wet. If you wait until it's dry, then you run the risk that it's going to remove some of the paint where you wanted it to stay onto whatever project it is that you were stenciling. And I don't know why I like this so much, but it really spoke to me. So I really wanted to make these blocks, these happy blocks, so that I can incorporate it into my decorating. I think for Christmas, I'm going to do some that say merry and bright and just different words like that. But here is the end result, my happy block. And it really does make me happy seeing how cute this turned out. Now I did want to show you a couple of different tiered tray fall ideas. So I got these glass jars at Hobby Lobby, and then I had this orange paint. So I'm going to make something for my tiered tray. So I just took that orange paint and I put it into the glass jar. Then using a paintbrush, I just brought that paint up onto the sides of the jar to make sure the jar was completely covered with the paint. Then using my tiny stamps again, I made a little label that says pumpkin butter. And I used some Pixis craft glue and I just secured that to the front of my glass jar. So you can see I'm making a little jar of pumpkin butter. But this glass jar has a lid, so I'm going to take this burlap ribbon and I'm going to secure that to the lid of the glass jar. And then I cut out the burlap in a circle that's a little bit larger than the lid itself. And then I came back with some hot glue and I secured those longer edges down around the sides because I don't want to see the glass poking through and I just want to see that burlap. And keeping the burlap a little bit longer around the edges makes it easier to cover up all of the glass. And then I came back with my scissors and just trimmed off any of the really long edges. And then I put the lid onto the pumpkin butter, so the larger portion of the glass jar, and then I came back with some baker's twine, and this is in orange and white, and I got this at the Dollar Tree, and I just wrapped that and tied it around the top edge. So this makes it look like it's a teeny tiny jar of jam, or in this case, pumpkin butter. And I secured the baker's twine with hot glue. Next, I came back and made a small bow out of the twine. And using some hot glue, I attached it to the side of the glass lid. I didn't want to put it in the center because I want you to be able to see the lettering that I did. And here's my finished project. This is really fun. It's so cute. It was so easy to do, and I think it will look great on my tiered tray. Right now, it's sitting on this little bar cart that came from Target. But isn't that cute? So I have these two wooden pumpkins from the Dollar Tree, and they're both blank, so nothing is on them. They're just blank wood. And I'm going to combine the two of these so that it's going to be one larger pumpkin. So after I removed all of the extra stuff like the labels, then I had to figure out where to cut the stem off of the first pumpkin, the one that's going to be on top. So I took it out in my garage, cut off the stem, and then sanded it down. Then I brought it back into my craft room and using some folk art dark antiquing wax and all of the smaller pieces of the pumpkin, so like the background of the pumpkin, I stained all of those. I left the center raised pieces the natural color, and it is okay that some of that wax gets onto the center. That won't matter in a little bit. Then I came back with some Dollar Tree wood glue and I secured that pumpkin to the larger pumpkin. Next, I came back with some black acrylic paint, and I really thought I wanted this to be black, but the closer I got to being finished with it, I decided I didn't really like the dark paint with the darker wax. It is pretty, so if you wanted to do something like this, that's what it would look like. But that's not what I wanted. So once that had time to dry, I came back with some folk art parchment acrylic paint and I painted all of the black with the lighter paint. Now it did take a couple of coats of that parchment colored paint to cover up the black completely. And I was just really careful to make sure that I did not get that white onto the stained part of the pumpkin. I do like this a lot better. I really like this look better. But I did want to add a little bit of darker color to the outer edge of the pumpkin. So I came back with some painter's tape and I taped off a small portion all the way around the outer edge of the pumpkin. And then I came back with the wax and I just painted the edges. Sometimes when you're crafting, you have a project or an idea in your head and you think you want to do it, but halfway through you decide, you know what, that's just not what I want. So that's what happened with this project. And once I was done painting, then I removed the painter's tape. And I decided I wanted to hang some beads from the center of the pumpkin. So I just took some black beads and put it onto some jute twine. I made a little tassel at the end and then just wrapped it around the stem of the pumpkin. And then I took some raffia bows from other projects that I've had in the past and I glued 2 of those together and then I attached them to the top of my bead strand. I really like this pumpkin. I think it looks cute, but I did want to add one more thing. So I had some leaves and I gave it a quick paint job and there is my project. I really like how this turned out. I think the dark and the lighter colors go really well together, at least for my decorating. What about you? Would you have left this black or would you make it the antique parchment color? Now here is another Dollar Tree pumpkin, and then I have this fall ribbon that I got from, I think I got this from Michael's. I cut several pieces of this ribbon and the edges are wired, so I did go ahead and remove that as well. What I'm going to be doing is covering this pumpkin with this ribbon, but I wanted the strands to be thinner. And then I had this orange pumpkin print that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I also cut this down into strips a little bit thinner than the first strips that I made of that ribbon. I started by taking that plaid ribbon and putting that all around the pumpkin. And I just used the hot glue to secure it in place. And like I always do with all of my pumpkins, whatever I do on one side, I go back and do the same on the opposite side to keep the material even throughout the project. Next, I came back with the Dollar Tree fabric and I folded it up just a little bit. And I secured these pieces to the pumpkin as well. I didn't secure the edges. I kind of like the edges being up a little bit. I want this to look like a rustic pumpkin, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes by leaving it a little bit rough or ragged makes it perfect, I think. And I just continued this process all around the pumpkin. I wanted to use more of the Dollar Tree material than the plaid material. So on a couple of the sections, I actually wrapped the Dollar Tree material around my finger just to raise it up and make it look a little more rough as well. Then I came back with these Dollar Tree stickers and I thought this would be really pretty for a tag for my pumpkin. This pumpkin isn't just any pumpkin. I'm going to make a pumpkin muffin. I thought this would be so cute for adding to a tiered tray or just even on its own. So I took the Dollar Tree stickers and I also used some pinking shears to give a little bit of a different texture to the scrapbooking paper that's going to be on the back. And then I used my stamping letters that I got from Michael's that can connect together. And I had to find all of the letters to spell out pumpkin. So once I had spelled out pumpkin, then I used some distressing ink to stamp the word pumpkin onto my Dollar Tree sticker. Then I stamped the word spice. So this is going to say pumpkin spice on my cute little pumpkin muffin. Then I came back with some wired craft paper and just twirled that around a paintbrush to get a nice little twirl. And I also made a jute bow. Then I took a couple of rustic buttons and glued those together. And then I also had some little adornments. These are some pip berries along with some leaves. And I'm going to be attaching all of those to the top of my pumpkin. A little bit of the leaves, and then I'm also going to put on a homemade stem that I made. Then I came back with some of the pip berries. And I'm just going to work my way around the top of the pumpkin. Next, I secured the buttons to the pumpkin. Then I added in the craft paper. And then I determined where I wanted my pumpkin spice little sign to go. And while I was putting this in place, I did bend it a little bit so it would look a little more aged. And once all of those top adornments were in place, then I came back and attached the jute bow. I added another wooden leaf to the top of the pumpkin, and I think that looks really cute. But I want to add a little bit more rustic or primitive look to this, so I came back with some cinnamon and I just sprinkled that all around the top of the pumpkin, and then I did a little bit of the sides of the material too. If you've never used cinnamon in your crafting, it really does give, I guess, more of a primitive look to it. And I really like that look. Then I found this tin. I thought this looked like a perfect cupcake tin. And so what I'm going to do is put in some different Spanish moss and then some different pieces. I think this is some kind of a moss. I don't know. I got this at Michael's. And I added a little bit of hot glue because I'm going to secure my pumpkin muffin into the tin. Look at that. Isn't that so pretty? And here is my pumpkin spice muffin sitting in my decor. I love this so much. It really was a fun project. And sometimes it does take a little bit of extra time. Not every project can be super, super easy, but I think this one is definitely worth it. Now, have you seen these rolling pins at Dollar Tree? Aren't these so cute? Well, I'm going to be using these, but not as rolling pins. So I'm going to remove the rolling pin parts on the sides, and I am going to save these because I have another idea of what I can use those little rolling pins for. But I have 3 of the rolling pins, and I'm going to remove all of those little extras. Now I'm going to come back with this sanding block and I'm going to sand down the words that are on the front of these boards now. They're literally like pieces of wood. And one thing that I found is a lot of the pieces at Dollar Tree, they actually have a wood grain to them. You can't sand it all the way down or you'll sand that wood grain away. It's not real. But what I did was sand down the lettering, and then I came back and filled in the sides where the handles were with some hot glue. You could also use caulking or glue or whatever you had. I just happened to have the hot glue handy, so I just filled in those holes that were for the rolling pin handles. And what I'm going to do is take some walnut stain, and I'm going to stain each of these pieces of wood because I want it to look like wood. So once I had stained it, I went ahead and wiped away the excess stain. And I just repeated that process on all 3 pieces of wood. Then I came back with some fall colors. One is kind of a green, one is kind of a golden, I don't know, golden something, and a spiced berry. So I painted each of these pieces of wood with the paint. I did the golden one first. I put a little bit of water onto that just to thin out the paint a little bit because I do want to see some of the stain. And then I wiped away some of the paint. I repeated the process with the green. Sprayed a little bit of water onto it, and then wiped away the excess paint. But I really want to make sure that all of those words are not going to show through, so I went back with a little bit more paint and then just wiped it off again. And then I did the third and final board with the spiced berry paint. This is kind of a burgundy red, and I think it looks really pretty for the fall. Couple spritzes of water, and then I wipe away the excess paint. Once they were dry, I did come back with the sanding block again, and I just sanded off a little bit more of the paint because I do want some of that stain to show through. I did this on the red board. I did it on the green board. And then I did it on the gold board. And even though you can still see some of the original wording showing through, it will not show through in the end. I think I already said that, but I promise it won't show as much. And I think it gives a little bit of character to these pieces. Then I used my Cricut machine and I stenciled out the words thankful, grateful, and blessed. And I burnished the stencil onto each of these signs. When I applied the transfer tape, it did take off a little bit more of the stain, but I think that's what gives this a very rustic farmhouse type look. Next, I came back with the folk art parchment acrylic paint. I really like this color. It's kind of a soft cream color. And using my fancy stencil tool, which is the Dollar Tree Magic Erasers, I stenciled the paint onto each of these blocks of wood. And just like the happy block that I made, I did thin coats of paint. And while the paint was still wet, I removed the stencil. Again, don't wait until the paint dries because if you do, it might remove some of the paint and your word with it off of your project. And then taking some jute twine, I just wrapped that around one side of each of the signs. For the thankful sign, I wrapped the jute twine on the opposite side that I did the blessed and the grateful. And once I had the jute twine wrapped around one end, then I attached a little jute bow on top. And this is the end project. Oh my goodness, I love these. I found something very similar to this on Etsy, and it was like $45. But I was able to make all three of these signs for less than $5. I call that a great DIY project. And if you've been enjoying this video, go ahead and click that subscribe button. And if you click the bell notification, you'll get an alert every time I have a new video coming out. If you like fall, if you like DIY decor, I'm very confident that you will like the videos that I'm sharing with you. And as you can see, I still have a lot of different fall DIYs that I have to share with you. I am having so much fun. Look at this adorable little pillow. Isn't that cute? That is a project that I'm going to be sharing with you in my next video, along with this fluffy pumpkin and this Hello Pumpkin sign. These are all easy to do, and I'm going to show you step by step how you can make these projects too. I think you're really going to enjoy them. Don't forget to click that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.